Hey there, I'm Rav, and I'm here to tell you how to play Krono. Kronosaurus, a short-necked pilosaur, is the hunter of hunters in Bob's Oceans, and as of this video, the second heaviest carnivore on the roster weight-wise, with it being the only thing in the ocean doing lots of injury naturally, having a high attack damage, and having the highest HP pool of any of the carnivores in the game. This fish is a tough nut to crack, not to mention you can even go invisible, and have lethal wall hacks. Krono has 2 attacks. Krono's main attack is a simple bite that does pretty good damage and okay injury. This attack will be your main damage dealer, but your secondary attack, which is a bit more complicated, can offer you much more if you use it. Krono's second attack is a devastating lunge that charges for a few seconds, and after it fills up, will deal a large chunk of damage and most importantly, will apply a lot more injury than your bite does. This attack is your opener and a chaser, as the lunge build can lunge much more and further. Do keep in mind though, this takes AP and a bit of stamina to use. However, you can make this cheaper by getting Swift Leopard in the speed tree and Powerful Lunge in the power tree. Krono also has 2 abilities, which are Elusive, which makes it so you can turn invisible and cannot be detected by the Keen Senses talent. This ability is very good for going unnoticed around the map, and especially in tunnels where Krono can swim into and ambush prey in the water, such as Moses that use Keen to watch for the prey of the sea. With 4 points invested, this talent makes Krono attack while remaining cloaked and can charge lunge as well, but will leave as soon as it lunges, and with 5 points invested, you can remain cloaked in any situation, even when getting hit. Do keep in mind though, this does take your AP, and you will not be able to regain stamina or AP while elusive. Keen Senses. This ability allows you to see players with a red outline through walls by pressing the smell key. This ability is very good for keeping up with players that are running from you, or for looking through areas that are difficult to see through like caves and thick brush. As mentioned before, this ability is blocked by elusive, so keep your ears open. Now that you know a bit more about Krono, let's talk about how this bad boy plays. Krono is the truest ambusher in the game right now, and is quite powerful despite what some of the community thinks of it. You are the tankiest thing in the ocean, with Moza having about 400-ish HP, give or take less than you. Krono is the only real injury dealer, so things can't just face tank you and walk away, and you can easily stand your ground versus the other 2 aquatics, as you can't be grabbed easily by Moza, and Elasmo can be killed in almost 2 bites for most meta builds. Even most of the land creatures can't really fight you in the water, which with Out of Element being as strong as it is right now at the time of this video, can be a real game changer. Now I'll run you through some matchups for Krono. Mosasaur. The main antagonist of your Krono origin story, Moza will be your main enemy and prey. Being one of the 2 apexes of the ocean, Moza and Krono both share the same group limits, being 3. So for straight up fights, Krono will have the advantage, but if the Mozas can pick you up, this is where things start to get sticky, as thrash damage does hurt. The good thing is Slippery is a 0.45 talent and Thick Hide is a 0.8 talent. Both counters it quite nicely. If you are new to the game, Slippery basically makes you escape Moza's grab quicker, and makes you deal more ability damage. Another way to make Krono harder to pick up is getting fat, but that comes at the risk of having a worse turning rate, so be careful. You will also need to learn how to strafe, as you don't want to miss hitting them from turning, as Moza is super mobile and can easily dart away from you, so landing lunges or applying as much injury as possible is essential for this matchup. Elasmo, the second aquatic on this list. The noodle is not a very huge threat to you for the most part. Elasmo has a low HP pool, can't dish out much damage, and does not have the bruiser talent, meaning Thick Hide is really good and landing 2 hits is almost enough to kill it. When you are solo and there are many Elasmo though, beware, as they do have low fighting stats. They are the fastest thing in the ocean and can easily get in and out of fights. Additionally, Elasmos are super hard to hit due to their body shape, and when they dart bite they become very hard to hit, as their hitbox is a bit wonky due to their spaghetti code. Overall, just don't get caught out alone. Tyrannosaurus Rex, Jagrex, Aquarex, or as I like to call it, Bootleg Spino, is basically you, but better. While Rex does not have a dart or lunge, it deals a lot of damage and dishes out way more injury than you. Even when getting strong bones, which for Krono is a 0.45 talent, this will not help, as if they get 1 bite on you, that's most likely game over. If you do decide to fight them, however, do not face tank them, as you will lose. Lunge them as much as possible so you're hard to hit, and then they are crippled, and avoid taking damage as much as possible. Your playstyle is very similar, and people may compare you two to each other, but Rex will always be the face tank king of Beast of Bermuda. Apado. You can almost face tank Apado with the right build, but if you're not careful, they can kill you. Getting stuck on land at any point is a death sentence, and if they are smart, they will run past you to whip you further on the shore. They also do quite a bit of injury damage with the right build, so try and avoid taking kicks, though you can probably afford to take 1 or 2 if you have strong ones. This matchup is best done in the water, as when they are guarding things on land like Paros, you're not really going to be able to do much damage to them because of their tails. Overall, on land I would avoid. In the water, try and go for their back feet or their neck, as they can't neck swing. Now for the first of the semi-aquatics, Lurdu. Lurdus before the remodel were monsters that all the aquatics feared. Now they have less HP than before, but still have most of the other stats. Getting hit by a dart hurts, and as they are pretty nimble, it can be pretty easy to miss biting them, especially if they have higher numbers. Hitting them once, sometimes even twice, may not be enough to make them go away, so if you need to get away from them, I recommend going as deep as possible, or in a place that is hard to dodge like a cave. The reason you want to go deep though is because the semi-aquatics don't take pressure very well compared to the full aquatic apexes, so in the deep waters, you're pretty safe. Ichthyi. Opposite of Lurdu, Ichthyi was a joke before the update, as their low damage made them a joke to you. Now this is not the case. Ichthyi does a lot of damage and is by far the most nimble thing on this list, so it can hit you pretty easily. That being said, much like Elasmo, Ichthyi can't face tank you, and one good hit can be enough to make them go away, and much like the Lurdu matchup, going deep into a cave, or just deep in general, is a good way to defend yourself.
Mr. Krono.
Oh, is that what's going on?
Yeah, oh, whoa. Oh, I see it.
That guy's huge, we're out of here.
Oh. He's coming this way.
Kronosaurus. The hardest matchup that you will have is, of course, the mirror matchup. Krono and Mosamanes are pretty cannibalistic when it comes to each other, and Krono in particular is pretty hard, as in a majority of the fights, whoever lunges and hits first wins, as the person hit cannot move or lunge far, and with lunge build being meta at the moment, getting hit can be a death sentence. My advice to you is to stay low and stick to the ocean floor, or in a lower area on your walls to make being hit as hard as possible, and use your eyes to look for other Kronos. The early stages of Krono in particular are very hard, as unlike Moza, Krono does not have an easy getting away ability, and bigger Kronos tend to lunge further at lower cost, so staying unseen is the best method from what I've played. Bitey Kronos can also just tank you if they somehow get the jump on you, and a direct confrontation should be avoided at all costs. Overall, stay low, stay in heavy foliage, and keep an eye out. Literally the rest of the roster. Most of the terrestrials are easy to fight, as you can easily get behind them once in the water. I would definitely wait till they're about halfway and then attack to prevent them from getting back easily, and make sure you strafe to avoid getting hit, in particular with Sai, Koa, and Acro. Sai is the one that's unique, as you need to attack its head and not its tail, as it does damage from its club, so all you need to do is strafe its front to attack it. Koa you can attack pretty easily from behind, although do be wary of their hitbox, as sometimes they can hit from behind themselves if they point it correctly. And Acro is pretty strong in the water, because it can Intimidate you, and its bleed and damage is pretty similar to yours. Now we're going to move on to the builds that you should do for Krono. As usual, you don't have to do these builds to be successful, but these are just what works for me and my friends, so feel free to mix up the builds or maybe do your own. To start off first, the most popular build at the moment is the lunge build. The lunge build increases the damage, distance traveled, and lessens resources used, and is popular because a majority of the time Krono cannot straight up hunt without ambushing due to dart being such a better maneuvering tool rather than a damage tool, meaning all darters will get away if you don't land a hit or are seen prepping your lunge. This build also does not have much room for defensive talent, so you're fairly squishy. Despite that though, the lunge build Krono still has the highest kill rate I've ever seen between the three builds, and will most likely remain this way for quite a while. The second build I see is the bite build, which is another combat speed build. This build takes away power from your lunge and puts in your bite, swim speed, and thick hide to make you tanky and an in-your-face fighter. This is a good build for the casual Krono player, as they do not have to use lunge, and if they don't want to, is a good way to learn strafing early rather than later, due to the fact that this build is good at straight up combat. You will also be fairly tanky, meaning 1v1s or even 1v2s are possible. That being said, this build is very weak to other Kronos, specifically the ones that are lunge build, as one hit will immobilize you and they can rinse and repeat. That is the only real weakness to this build, minus lunge damage and distance, as the other builds will struggle killing you in most situations unless it's the next build. The last build, which is very good but myself do not go anymore, is combat survival. This build is a powerhouse, dealing a lot of damage and having a lot of extra HP and damage reduction from thick hide and HP to make Krono a really tough cookie to crack. This build in particular really thrives in caves and in area defense, as most of the roster other than itself and Rex can't face tank Krono, and takes care of this build's weaknesses being no speed and importantly no nimble. That being said, getting caught in the open with this build can be a death sentence, and as you have no real way to catch up with anything, things like Elasmo and Ichthyi will run you around like a merry-go-round even with you using strafe. Other than your speed and turning weaknesses though, this build opens up another build, being the Fat Krono build, where you get to get as fast as possible and get tough stomach. Overall, I really do like this build, but in the current meta in the ocean, just not great. Life strats and pros and cons. Krono is a fun ambusher, and once you learn your way around the oceans and where to hide, you and your friends can become quite the force to be reckoned with. With the highest damage in the ocean, being the only bruiser talent creature, arguably one of the best gap closers in the game, and when invested into, elusive, the sneakiest creature in the game, is definitely the hidden dragon in Bob. It does have some pretty glaring weaknesses though, being a fairly bad turn rate, not being able to dart, which in this meta sucks, as Krono's lunge, while more powerful, is slow to use. When they can, if Moses pick you up, they can do a lot of free damage, which at the larger gross can be rough. And lastly, elusive, the sneaky talent, is not perfect. In some cases even broken, as you can still see a blurry outline or just a regular black figure, which can stick out more than if you were just uncloaked. For my life strategies, stay by walls in the ocean floor and away from the open ocean to avoid getting cheesed, and when you can, try and stay in tight areas so things cannot easily dart you. Being unseen is key, and once you are found out, some will run away from you and be uncatchable, and some will bully you before you can get a lunge off. A really important thing to do in the ocean is learning to strafe and find a good button or key to put it on. Personally, I have a razor mouse with the button I use to make it easy, or I think by default you can just use the wheel button on your mouse. And for my last piece of advice, learn the oceans and the fastest way to the shrines, and what is the best way to keep the speed shrine buff on. I would make a video on it, but Titania is not done, and it's different for everyone. Alrighty, that's it for today's video. I really hope this guide helped you. As a reminder, don't be afraid to go onto the DM servers or test servers. That'll help you out tremendously. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And feel free to leave a comment below if you guys think I missed something.